Hi there, this is Brick from How to IELTS, and today we have a very special guest on the channel. We have Somik, who is from Bangladesh, and the reason why he is a special guest on our channel today is because he scored a band 8.5. Absolutely amazing. It's the highest score we've had on this channel. His English speaking skills are incredible. So today I will interview Somik and just get some advice on how people can improve their English speaking skills. So Somik, welcome to the YouTube channel. It's nice to see you again.
Thank you so much, sir. I'm happy to be here tonight.
Well, thank you for joining me. But just before we begin, can you just introduce yourself so people know who you are?
Yes, sure. So, firstly, my name's Shomik, and I'm from a small town from the northern side, of course. The last time I said that was in south, but that was not. But yeah, if I'm gonna talk about my background, like basically, I'm studying at the moment. I'm gonna sit for the IELTS exam in few days just for my master's degree, and aiming to get at least for 7.5 or above. Let's hope for the best.
Yeah. Well, I think you'll definitely get that. So just to confirm, Somik scored a band 8.5 on his mock test. And yeah, regarding the northern and southern part, I know we had a few comments on the video. I will link the video here somewhere. I thought in this interview style podcast or show, we'll break it up into three sections. So first, we'll just get some introductory information from you. So I will ask you a few questions. Then I thought it would be fun if I give you some scenarios. So what you would advise students to do if they were in a specific case. For example, if a student is stuck at a band 5, for example, what can he or she do? And then at the end, we want to talk more about the most popular sort of questions that I've had, which is questions regarding part 2 of the IELTS speaking test. So, just to begin with, your English is quite amazing. Okay, you seem quite fluent. So, how did you first start to learn English?
I think it's a little bit difficult to answer this question, but if I'm gonna start from the stress, so when I was in my elementary school, I remember my dad basically bought some books for me, and that was basically about improving vocabularies. So that time, like I wasn't that much interested to memorize some words or even knowing some phrases in more details, like having the how can basically people can use it in their daily conversation, something like that. So I basically started my learning English when I was so much young, and gradually I start developing my overall skill, I believe.
Okay, that's really interesting. So, I have a question for you, Some. So, if there is a student and they are starting their English journey, where should they begin? Because you said you started with vocabulary.
Yes, I think the best approach it could be being as a beginner. I believe listening it could be the best option. I think there are few reasons behind it, but I think the most common one is listening is basically considered as a input skill, right? So when people can listen more and more, they automatically they can expand their vocabularies. As I said, when I was too young, so my dad basically bought some books for me, and to memorize some words, I think the method that is not quite popular, at the same time not quite interesting. But through to getting some some videos online, or maybe listening some podcast, I think it could be the best approach to expand vocabularies. At the same time, they can figure it out how to use those words in the right context. So I believe as a beginner, listening is the best approach, and gradually they can start improving the writing, speaking. Automatically, everything will come.
That's such an interesting point, Somik. I often recommend my students to watch TV shows like Friends. I don't know if you've seen Friends.
Yeah,
Are there
yeah.
any? Oh, yeah. Okay, interesting. It's a really fun show. But are there any recommendations that you have? So you said listen, and you said you can watch TV shows, YouTube videos, and podcasts. Is there anything in particular that you would recommend? Maybe a specific podcast or anything?
I think being as a beginner, maybe people can start by watching some movies. I think the fun movies, for example, Harry Potter. I think most people know about that one very well. I think watching some movies, it could be fun, and the words they tend to use it in movies, I think is a little bit easier comparing to listening to podcasts because people might use some advanced words in it. So to watch, start watching some those sort of movies, the words are quite a bit like intermediate level. I think they can start from there, and afterwards they can push themselves to go for podcast videos or maybe some documentaries. Gradually, they can cover those stuff too.
Okay, well, thank you so much for that. That's I hope that benefits a lot of people. Just one point on that. So watching TV shows and listening to podcasts, that's not important. How important do you think it is to actually practice speaking with other people?
It is extremely important. I said about the listening because as a beginner, I think if they start talking to others, I think they can feel demotivated because probably they might not have that much of fluency to carry the conversation forward. So when they're actually starting their listening, probably they're expanding their vocabularies, and at the same time, when they have enough vocabulary, if they start talking, talking to others, I think that might be a best approach, I believe.
Okay, so just to clarify, you're saying step one should be input where you listen, and would you say step two is to speak to other people then?
Yeah, speak to others definitely is the next step. Definitely, yeah.
Okay, so I have a question. So, as you know, I have an IELTS WhatsApp group, and there are many students from Bangladesh and other countries as well. But one of the most popular questions I get is, "Sir, there are not many people in my hometown who speak English, so I don't know who to practice." But what can these people do? They want to learn English, but they don't have anybody to practice with.
I think then they should definitely go for talking to themselves. Like if people don't have anybody right next to them, I think the best approach it could be talking to them. Because talking to own self. Why I'm saying it? Because if we're not pushing ourselves to talk more, I think the output skill is not going to be that much effective, I believe. So if we're about to improve our speaking, so it means that we need to speak no matter if we have person right next to us. If don't, then we have to do it by ourselves. So I believe like there's no alternative in it.
That's such an incredible piece of advice. I don't think many people would think of doing that. So thank you so much for that. I think just to add on to your point, I think what also helps if you don't have anybody to practice with is when you are speaking to yourself, try and record yourself a video record. Okay, and that allows you to watch your own footage and to see how you speak English. A lot of the times when we see ourselves, we can learn a lot of how good we are or what areas we can improve on. Would you agree with that, Somek?
Yes, definitely, definitely. I think this is another approach, the best approach in my opinion, because when we're listening to our own voice, it means we can identify what are the mistakes that we're making frequently. Because when we're expressing ourselves to others, it means that when there is no best possibility to listen to our own speech, right? But when we're recording our voice, and at the time when we're going through it, so it means that we can spot on, we can just identify the mistakes and we can fix them all in the later time. So yes, I agree with that.
Interesting, interesting. Right. So we're now going to move on to the second part of this interview, and here I will give you some scenarios, and these are real scenarios which many students have asked me. So in the WhatsApp group, I said, "Look, I will be interviewing Somik. What questions do you have?" So these are some of the questions. Here's the first one. My test is in 1 month, 4 weeks away. What should I be doing to prepare for the IELTS speaking exam?
I think it is not a huge time, I think, but I believe that they should cover as much as possible some, common topics. They need to expand their ideas because what I basically get a chance to see it. I think most people they do have great level of English. I think they speak quite well, but sometimes they cannot talk effectively just because they're having lack of ideas in their mind. So I believe they can go for covering few in a common topics. For example, it could be technologies, or maybe they can cover about education. So they can take some ideas from these topics, and they can. It's not just about like memorizing like the sentences. It's just about taking the ideas, and automatically when it comes to the exam day, they can use those knowledge, and they can definitely get a good score.
Yeah. Um, One thing I want to add on there is I can tell that you've practiced a lot for the IELTS speaking test, because those two topics that you mentioned, technology and education, they are very popular topics. I have so many speaking tests that I've done myself on my YouTube channel, and a lot of the topics that just come up are technology and education. So I can already tell that this is advice that you practiced yourself. Um, yeah, so thank you for that. There's and sorry, one more thing. I do like the fact that you said that this isn't a lot of time, which is true. I always advise students that to prepare as early as possible, but there are lots of people who are stuck in this position. Their test is only 4 weeks away, so that's why I wanted to ask you that question.
Sure.
So, second scenario, I am currently stuck at a band 6. What can I do to get a higher score?
Um, I think they can definitely try to find out like what's the right approach to answer the questions, because we know very well when it comes to get high band score, I think people should try to expand their answers. Like I do have some friends who don't actually know that how to expand their answers. For example, probably in part one they can tackle some questions by just answering them in one sentence, but when it comes to part three, it means that we need to expand the answers by using at least for 4 or 5 sentences. So to me, I think to get the high band score, I think expanding answers it is really really effective, and at the same time they can push themselves to memorize some sort of topic specific words. For example, if I'm going to talk about technology, they need to memorize some words, or they need to know how to use some topic specific words. I think that definitely helped them out to get the high band score.
Wow, thank you so much for that. This is so fascinating for me because I'm getting the side that of a student explaining this. So it's really interesting to me. I'm learning myself. So thank you. I really appreciate that. Right, scenario 3. Well, it's not so much a scenario, but it's a question. Are there any TV shows that you watched that helped develop your English skills?
Um, I think like Friends, like when I was too young, so I was most of the episodes multiple times. Because Friends are always this show is quite funny. At the same time, like Harry Potter's, I covered most of the parts, I believe, of the movie. So I think like there's the particular recommendations, because from my side, like I mainly prefer like covering some genre which is a little bit like mysterious, something like that. But I think for others, I think they might not get interested in it. So I think people need to identify what's their favorite genre, and they can definitely take help from Google. They can just put it down the keywords, and they'll get a lot of recommendations.
Okay, okay. Just on that point, you said Harry Potter. A really interesting fact. There's an actress in Harry Potter who is from my hometown, Manchester, and she is Bengali, actually. So yeah, an interesting fact.
Okay.
Uh, yeah, I just want to ask you a question. So you mentioned TV shows or watching movies like Harry Potter. Um, would you recommend people using subtitles to help them, or no?
Um, I believe if they are in intermediate level, I think they should push themselves not to use subtitles, because when they have subtitles, probably they're about to see the sentences one by one rather than just focusing on what they're actually saying. So I think using subtitles is okay for the beginners. But I believe when they are actually crossing that boundary, they should stop using subtitles for their listening improvement, I believe.
Okay, okay. Right. Next scenario. Um, I feel comfortable with my English. However, I don't know how long I should study for. How long should I practice speaking English per day?
Well, I would say that 24 hours maybe would be the best approach, but I think at least for 2 to 3 hours, I think they should dedicate themselves if the exams are, it's just knocking at the door, because they need to cover multiple modules. It's not just they're about to focus on only the speaking, but they do have other modules too. So I think 2 to 3 or maybe 4 hours would be the best approach, in my opinion.
Okay. And is that every day or just like 3 days a week, 4 days a week?
I highly recommend they have to be consistent, because if they're practicing 5 hours in a day and if they're taking gap in the middle, so I believe that the practice session wouldn't be that much effective. So they don't need to like study a lot, but at least it is necessary to be consistent. I think that will help them towards their goal they do want to achieve.
Okay, okay, interesting. I'm learning so much from you, even as a teacher who's done this for 10 years.
Thank you so
Right,
much.
no worries. Okay, here's the next one. I have a feeling that in my test, I might feel very nervous. What can I do to overcome this?
I believe that, of course, it's going to be nerve wracking, but I think it would be best approach if they can breathe, if they're feeling nervous a bit. I think that really works. And at the same time, I think if a student is well prepared, I think automatically they can do well in the final exam. So to myself, when it comes to sitting for an exam, whether it's IELTS or it is like my academic test or something in my institution, so I always tell myself that, okay, take good preparation and just try to cover all of the things beforehand, and then automatically the exam day it should be quite smooth, so you don't have to hesitate about anything.
Okay, right. Um, Final scenario, and then we'll move on to a different part of this interview. So here's the scenario. I can understand English very well, but when I try to speak, I struggle to find the word quickly. How can I improve my fluency? That's a hard question.
Yes. I think I think the best approach, it could be cover some topics beforehand, as I said earlier. If people have topic in their mind already, is they know what is basically necessary to speak about. So I don't think so. Like they will feel hesitated or they're about to look for words in the middle of the conversation. So it means that definitely they need to prepare quite. They need to take good preparation for the exams, and as much as possible, they need to cover some topics. And of course, taking mock exam, it really helps, and sir is already here. So if people are, like if they're thinking that what they can do, to assess their actual skill set, I think they can definitely, take help from your side. I believe it really works.
Well, thank you for that compliment. Right, we're going to move on to talking about questions that come up in part two of the speaking test. So as you know, the questions in part two, you'll be given a topic, and then you have to speak about that topic from anywhere between 1 and 2 minutes. Now, most people they struggle with, not most, but many people, they struggle with this. So I've got a few questions regarding this. So question one, uh, what advice would you give to someone who is specifically preparing for part two of the IELTS speaking test?
I think when it comes to taking preparation, they need to understand what the cue card is about, right? So if they're not about to understand the topic or the questions properly, it might be quite challenging for them to answer it properly. Because especially in the IELTS exam, when it comes to, especially from the examiner's perspective, they often look for relevant information, right? So firstly, what they should do, they need to find out a proper way how they can answer, how they can understand the topics quite well along with the questions. And when it comes to taking the notes, they need to be more precise, they shouldn't write down more they need to expand their ideas because they do have limited time. Like I believe like we're about to have 1 minute for taking notes. So as much as possible, they need to, they need to be more precise. They need to write down the actual keywords in the paper, and they can, and what and while it is about to express themselves, they can take a look on those words and they can start speaking it. I think in this way they need to start practice. They should start practicing back their home, right? When they're at home, when they're practicing it, they need to develop the skill set. And when it comes to taking the exams, if they have good preparation and if they know how to use the strategy well, they'll automatically do well.
Okay, so are you saying that in your 60 seconds preparation time, that it's better to make notes rather than write your full answer?
I think to write down the full answer is hard because we're about to like find out keywords for 3 questions. Because for a specific keyword, I think we're about to have a scenario in the top section, and then we're about to have at least for 3 to 4 questions. So to write down a full answer, I think it takes quite a bit of time, right? Because 60 seconds, I don't think is quite enough. So they need to write down the precise word in the copy or in the paper, and then afterwards they can take a look while speaking it. I think that will help them out.
Okay, right. I 100% agree with what you've said. In fact, I agree with everything, all the pieces of advice that you've given. Right. The next question regarding part two is, some students worry that they don't have enough to say for 2 full minutes. What can they do in this situation?
Oof. I think in this scenario, I think they should start preparing a story, I believe, because I watched some contents on YouTube. I think most of the teachers, what they really advise, the teachers often say that if you're not familiar with the topic, so just try to think about what the question is actually saying. And just try to analyze them in details, and then just try to prepare a story. Because to make a story, I think it is not that much hard. So rather than to find out the accurate answers, right? So I believe that they should look at that the keywords first of all. I mean, they need to identify the keywords in the beginning while they're taking notes, and afterwards when they're about to start speaking it, so they can start looking at all the keywords, then they can try to think about it to start making a story, something like that. I think this is the right approach. It could be, from my opinion.
Okay, that's an interesting technique. I know there's many techniques. I really like that actually. Creating stories. Um, yeah, so maybe that's something I will advise my students. Um, right, next question. Are there any techniques that you used to help you with answering part two questions?
Yes, as I said earlier, that mostly from my side, what I tend to do when I'm about to receive the cue card, I'll firstly start looking at the top section where I'm about to have the scenario. Then I try to think about it like what could be the actual keywords that I can align them with the question itself. So I try to look at that all the questions that tend to be in the bottom section of it. Then I'll start finding out the keywords, the right keywords. And then when the examiner is about to say that now it's time to start speaking, then I try to look at the all the keywords at once, keywords, and then I'll start speaking.
Okay, okay. Right. That brings me on to another question. You kind of touched on it just before, and this is something that many people face. So, what would you do if you were given a topic card and you knew nothing about that topic?
Um, I think especially in the IELTS, when the examiners they tend to prepare the questions for the candidates, they don't often really bring any questions or the topic which is quite totally unfamiliar, right? So I think if I'm not familiar with the actual topic, for example, then I try to assume that okay, what could be the actual story that I can create from there? Because I can definitely understand what the keyword, what the scenario is about, and I try to push myself if I'm not understanding it, because not to understand properly, I think it could be quite a bit challenging when they're about to ask me to start speaking, right? So I try to analyze the question quite I try to analyze the questions properly, and then try to think about what could be the right keywords, and then afterwards, like, I try to look at that, and then I try to speak on it. So if I'm not familiar with that, I try to create the story, as I said earlier. So that's my strategies. Like, I never faced any scenarios before that I'm not totally unfamiliar with the topic. So most of the topics that I covered, at least I know like 60 or 70% of it.
Yeah, this is something, again, really good point. This is something that I think many students forget. The point of the topic card is not to trick you or catch you out. They'll always be about something that you are kind of familiar with, like technology or like education or like a healthy diet. It's something that everyone knows even a little bit about. Salmek, just a few things I want to ask you about yourself. So, were there any things that you struggled with when it came to learning how to speak English?
Yes, I mean, these days I'm pushing myself a lot to memorize some sort of topic specific words, not just for the speaking only, but we do have to tackle some questions in the writing sections too, where we need to generate ideas and then we need to start writing it. So to me, like, I'm struggling a bit to identify the topic specific words. This is why, like, I'm trying to like reading some or covering some sort of like some uh common topics, as I said, that people might often face when it comes to the speaking or the writing sections. So I try to take some ideas, and then I try to cover some sort of journals at the same time, which is quite available online. So I try to go through all of the sentences or what they're actually emphasizing it. I try to push myself to understand it effectively, and then if I actually find out some topic specific words, or maybe some words that I can definitely utilize while speaking it, or maybe maybe that I can use especially in writings as well. So I try to note down all of them, and then I'll start memorizing it, something like that. Not just memorizing, by the way, but just to cover everything when I'm about to sleep or something, so that I can actually identify what the word is actually referring it. So yeah, to memorize words is tough, but I'm doing it that one.
Okay, so it sounds like you've put a lot of time and effort into your studying. So I want to ask you, if what are your top three things that you would advise someone to do to learn English?
I think
Sorry,
the
I know I've just put you on the spot there, but it's just that I know you're doing so many things, which is absolutely brilliant. You're watching these TV shows, you're generating these ideas, you're doing so many things. So I want to know what are the top three.
It's okay. Especially the first piece of advice that I really want to give, if someone about to start preparing for the IELTS, it is like they should definitely start from the listening, because listening is so powerful in a sense that people can expand their vocabularies. They can definitely pick up some phrases. They can also use it while like tackling some questions later. And also, like, listening, it can be helpful to like, in general, for example, if someone about to be in English speaking country after taking the IELTS test, they need to communicate, right? So in the later life too, listening skill, if it is like quite extremely well, then obviously it would be helpful for them to survive in those environments too. So listening is the best approach in my opinion, because this is like the input skill, and if they can understand pretty well, they can do well when it comes to speaking. So listening and speaking, I'm going to put it aside. And at the same time, for improving the reading and writing section, I believe writing is also tricky. Like, two things we need to keep in mind. One is about generating ideas, and the second one, we need to identify what's the right approach to write a proper essay by using academic words, the right formula in it. So to improve the reading and writing, they need to have good range of academic vocabularies, and they need to know, what's the right word, and they're using it in the context. They need to spot that one. They need to identify it. So I think learning vocabularies is another key things, and I think grammars, it also play a significant role in a sense to get high band score in the speaking at the same time in the writing. So they should improve a bit grammars, and vocabularies gonna be the right approach to. Is gonna be the second one, and listening, which is the top one, I believe.
Okay, okay. Um, really interesting points there. So, so you mentioned vocabulary. What can people do to develop the vocabulary?
I think by memorizing, this technique is not that much popular these days because it could be sometimes boring and people have tendency to lose the words. So I believe the right approach it could be to take an entire article or a documentary. It's not important to have a long documentaries or papers or something like that or articles. So what they can do, they can take an article which is basically having not more than 250 words. They should try to pick all of the lines. They need to understand why these words is quite appropriate in this context, why they're not choosing another word, for example a synonym, which is a little bit easier one. So they need to analyze these things, and they should definitely maintain a copy or a notebook where they can put it down all of the new words they're getting, or even it could be a phrase, or even sometimes a sentence structures. So if they're facing any unfamiliar sentence structures, if they're facing, they can definitely take help from Google, and they'll definitely tell them out what this sentence is actually referring it, and they can also put down that one in their notebook. So afterwards, when they're about to finish their day, before going for sleeping, they can take a look all of them, at once. And this is how they can improve vocabularies. They can also develop their grammar skills, I believe.
Okay, right. That was so informative. I really learned a lot from you there. Are there any final messages from yourself, Somik, for the audience members?
Yes, thank you so much for watching the video. I'm pretty sure like it took more than 30 minutes, and thank you for watching, everyone.
Yeah,
And
thank you.
the thing I'm gonna say that just keep practicing. Just take help from sir if you need any help. And yeah, practice makes perfect. So just give your best effort. Thank you.
Yeah, and just like Somik said, I am here. I am an English teacher from the UK with 10 years of experience, so I'm more than happy to help anyone. But yeah, again, Somik, thank you so much for joining me today.
Welcome.
And say, I think we'll stop the video there.